Well, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so pleased that you're here with us today. It's going to be a fantastic session today. We're talking about negotiation, always a very exciting topic. I am a person that can learn a lot from our subject matter expert today on negotiation, so I'm excited too. But for those of you who I have not had a chance to meet before, my name is Libby Davis. I'm a program manager here at Forte, and I work specifically with our MBA students. And I just am thrilled to be part of this conversation today. And we're going to be talking about the topic of the day, which is the new rules of negotiation. This is going to be great. I'm really excited about it. And for those of you who maybe are joining us for the first time, welcome to our Career Coach virtual workshop series. So these are really designed to help you take charge of your career. They're interactive workshops, and they're led by experts in talent acquisition and career development. And really, we're hoping to give you all the tools you need, the strategies you need, and the insights you need to land your next big opportunity, whatever that looks like and whatever that means to you. So let's get started because we have a lot to talk about today. So I mentioned subject matter experts, and certainly Diane is one of them. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to Diane Fennig. Diane brings more than 25 years of career development and management experience in a university environment. And she brings that to executive search and leadership development now. She joined Gallagher Executive Search and Leadership Advisors, which was formerly Leadership Advisors, excuse me, the Human Capital Group in 2009 to incorporate her network with her keen sense of talent as a senior consultant. Diane has earned degrees from Marquette University, Miami University, and the University of South Carolina as foundations for her role as a career connector and educator. She serves as a guest blogger for the Society of Human Resource Management in the areas of recruitment, retention, and employee satisfaction. She also has enjoyed over a decade of work with the Business Management Leadership Institute, both as a facilitator and a class lead. So your introduction is, I need to say nothing more. You are ready to take on this session today. And so with that, I will turn the conversation over to you, and then I'll be back to help with Q&A later. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Well, thank you, Libby. We're going to start with a poll, as is my usual stint. So there's a poll going to be loaded just to give me a sense of where are you with negotiation. And I'm going to share my screen while you're doing that. All right, Teresa, let's see where people are with negotiation. Ooh, a little mixed. Okay. I always wonder if I should ask for more. Okay, good. This is helpful. It's always helpful for me to know where the audience is. And let me tell you, things have changed with negotiation, and I'm thrilled that we're talking about this. I'm going to make a note, and you're going to see this also in the chat. On Wednesday of this week, we've got a faculty member coming in to do kind of a short MBA course on negotiation and strategies for women. That's going to be more on technique. What I'm going to talk about is what to negotiate. She's going to follow up and do more of the technique of how to do it well. So if you can attend this Wednesday session, and again, the link to register for that is on the webpage. Post-COVID, work has changed. The work equation has changed. I think we will all agree to that. Before COVID, it was all about salary. And I'm going to start with salary because it's the one thing that everyone wants to know how to negotiate on. Now, please forgive this crazy cartoon, but it's so darn good. I can't get rid of it because I can't find a replacement. There's one gentleman at one end of the table with $65,000 in his little bubble. And the next gentleman is got $100,000 in his bubble. And it says, we're moving closer on salary. So, a couple things about salary. Number one, every state runs salary differently. Some states, it is illegal for me to ask what your current salary is. So, you need to know that. And so, what most employers are doing right now is saying, here's the range on this position for this role. So, if the range was 65 to 100, that's a very large range. And when people are told the range, here's a follow-up question I think is brilliant to ask. Help me know, what are the qualifications of the $65,000 candidate versus the $100,000 candidate? And listen carefully to that answer because that's going to give you a sense of where that employer sees you in that range. Again, 65 to 100 is very large. But that's a great follow-up question when they say what the range is. Know in your head what your number is of where do you want to get to in this next role? What is this role worth? And that's really important that you have in your head your number. Now, when someone makes an offer and calls you and says, Angela, we are ready to offer. I've been talking to everybody here. You know, we've been a couple days head down. We're ready to present an offer to you. Do not, if you don't think of, if you don't remember anything else from today, do not immediately say yes to an offer. No, 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 no. Never say an immediate yes. Turn that around and say, thank you for the thoughtfulness of this offer. But if I could have a little bit of time to put pencil to paper and review this offer, I will be back to you in the next few days. Because you want to see where you're missing things, or if you've got questions you didn't think about in this meeting, do not immediately say yes. And this is a true example and true story. My neighbor called me and he said, I've got this offer from the consulting firm, and this is what we talked about today. And I said, Did you just say that they're going to send you a FedEx package? He said, yes. I said, if they're sending you a FedEx package, that's you have no more time for negotiation. It's done. They're going to send you a letter of employment. And I go, you're not going to be able to negotiate already anymore because you've already agreed. And he goes, oh my gosh, I think I did. I said, no, you did. If they're saying they're sending you the package, you're not going to get a package. You don't want the full package. You want to talk about things and then have them send you the package when you've agreed to all the pieces for negotiation. So again, don't say yes immediately. Get in your head what your number is. So let's do some really simple math today. In your head, you want $85,000. That's what you want in your head for your salary. They come in with an $80,000 offer. And you hear that and you're like, "Oh, it's not what I want, but I want to hear the rest of the pieces." Here's a strategy to move that $80,000 mark up to where you want it to be. Ask for a 6-month review where you and your manager decide on the deliverables for your first 6 months and ask for that raise to be at least, at around the 10% mark. So then your $80,000 could become $88,000 at the 6-month mark. That's not a bonus. That is going to your base salary. So what I remind people is you wanted 85, but if you play your cards right on this one, you're going to end up with 88. I think you won on that. It works. It has worked very strategically for many, and it has worked very well. If you don't meet all your deliverables, maybe it's an 8 or 9% increase over 10. But either way, it's going to be better than what you wanted it to be. So one way to think about how to, strategies of negotiation. One of the things that people have been asking lots of questions about is what is the actual annual increase that I could look forward to? You should ask that question when you're interviewing with someone, but most times salary increases are at the 2% mark, maybe 3. So if you really want to boost your salary, your base salary, you need to do that with some kind of larger numbers. And that 10% at 6 months has worked really well. Now, there's 10 other things to consider to negotiate, and an MBA student in Anika, start the recording. There we go. There's 10 other things to think about, and so I want to go through these other 10 because salary is not the only thing to think about in your negotiation. The number one thing that everyone's thinking about right now is remote work. Before you ask for remote work, figure out what's their appetite for remote work. You've got to know the organization. You need to know if that's something they're willing to do or not. If it's 100% in person, you asking for remote probably won't work. So you need to figure that out. And with remote, what does that look like? Or is it something that can be reviewed kind of along your tenure? Someone just started a new job and they are permitted to work remotely, but the onboarding for the first 30 days, they really wanted them to have some time in the office. So they were trying to negotiate what does that look like? And the company said, well, because you're signing up to be a remote worker, it's going to be your responsibility to get here, and this location was a couple 100 miles away and to provide the housing. So I said, you've got to figure that out. Is there any way to negotiate that into your package, if there's going to be some kind of onboarding requirements? But you have to know the organization if remote work is something that they're willing to talk about. Bonus pay and equity. Bonus pay, understand, if they offer you a $5,000 signing bonus, that is a bonus. That is a one-time only. That is not something you're going to keep in your base salary. And many people don't understand that and say, wait a second, where is that $5,000? It will be a one-time pay. And usually it's a one-time pay with no strings attached. Equity might be, we are looking to do some equity to make sure that everyone's paid consistently. That might do some things, but sometimes equity payments are not in your, but they're kind of a one time. No, you want any equity to go right into your base. You want everything to be a part of your base pay moving forward. If you're in the middle of an equity adjustment in your current role, help them know I'm going to be losing money taking this opportunity based on the fact that I'm getting a 12% equity increase starting in May. Got to know that. Matching money in a 401k or a 403b. Maybe you're coming from an organization where there was a 15% match. This new organization is offering you a 12% match. Again, if it's a match, can you ask for more? Is that important to you? If it is, and it's something you're saying, I want to plan for my future, I want to ask if that's possible. Or if it's not possible in year one, is it possible as I work into year two with you? Again, ask for it, but it has to be a match. Vacation and PTO, always something that everyone looks at. My right now, if anyone has unlimited PTO, they're not taking all of it, which is just a shame because you need it. But if somebody comes in and gives you a 2-week vacation package and you're used to 4, you've got to ask, can I at least walk into a 3-week starting this first year? And when would I be eligible for 4 weeks? You need to know this. People who have had 4 weeks vacation and then go back to 2 are usually pretty miserable because they really miss that vacation time. So make sure if that's a priority for you, that gets top of the list. Can you do a side hustle? And are you in a non-compete place? So many people non-compete. If I change organizations, a non-compete would mean I couldn't work in industry at a competitor for 2 years. And many people are still doing non-competes. Side hustle, can you do consulting on the side, or is that not allowed in your role? You've got to ask those questions if this is something important to you. And sometimes people's side hustle is in the creative space, not even at kind of a conflict with work, but just make sure that that's something you want to be able to do. Now, here's one of my favorite boxes: relocation pay. Many of us won't need to relocate anymore because we're going to be remote workers or partially remote workers. So, in this relocation pay, here's some creative things that people have been able to be successful with. This is a great box to open. So, you don't have to move. Usually, a relocation package is about $10,000, depending how far you're moving across the country. About $10,000. How can you ask that your manager, in lieu of the relocation pay that you're not paying me, could I have that sum of money to, one, set up my home office? I have not been privileged to work at home in a devoted space yet. I'd like to purchase my own computer, my own printer, my own desk and chair for my new home office that I'm going to create for this role. And I'd also like to, prepay my internet for the year. And I'm like, That's brilliant. Let's use that money in a way for something that, again, it would be money that was one time only." Back to that story of someone who had to come on site for onboarding. How do you use that money to pay for that onboarding time? I'm willing to be here for the onboarding, but with you not paying housing and or transportation, that's going to be a bit of an expense. Could I use the relocation pay in lieu of that? Most people on that, you're going to get really down to the nitty-gritty of what they'll approve and what they won't, but figure out what the expenses are that you want them to pay for. And I've seen people be and heard stories of people being really successful here because it's money that they're not paying on you for remote work. What's your professional development? Maybe there's a conference coming up and they might say you get a limit of $5,000 for professional development and you come back and say, I usually attend these 3 conferences. I usually spend well over $8,000 on those 3 conferences. Could I have a little bit more money for that professional development? Or could I use my $5,000 allocation and the other $3,000 from the relocation pay? If you have licensure things that you have to keep up with as a CPA, that's not negotiable. You've got to have that. So how do you make sure that is part of what you negotiate for your work? Parental leave. You might be caring for your elderly parents or a new child at home. Many times parental leave had a 6-month window. You couldn't take parental leave for 6 months after 6 months of employment. You had to be employed for 6 months first. Well, many are saying, I'm ready to adopt a baby. I don't know when that adoption will come through. I'd like that to be effective immediately. So I've seen some people get really creative with how they negotiated parental leave and having it also acceptable for caring for their parents. Health insurance coverage for significant others and partners and elderly parents who didn't have health insurance coverage. People have been putting that in their package. Travel. Now that people are traveling again, especially with my consulting comrades that are on the road all the time, they go to cities and they never see the city. All they see is the hotel lobby and their hotel room. So, how do you ask your company when you're going to be on extended travel to allow you to travel on the bookends of that trip? Maybe you go in the weekend before and travel, and you go and you stay the weekend after. And again, you're already going to be there the second week, so you're saving them time and money of flying you back and forth home. How do you do that? And they sponsor your airline and they sponsor your travel expenses for those weekends because you're saving them, in essence, money from traveling back and forth. So travel has been one that people have now been asking for. How does that work? How could I do that? And how will you meet me on the travel engagements that I have? Shining star stories, things that people are doing really well. I've seen so much emphasis on professional development these days. We're trying to retain great people. So people are getting really creative with how they're going to make sure you get the professional development you need. And I'm seeing people hiring without degrees or an MBA that started. They're immediately allowing you to finish that degree. Um, I don't think it's a good idea to start an MBA and start a brand new job at the same time. That just makes my head kind of spin. But many people who are finishing a degree, they're allowing them to do it immediately because you already know the cadence of the program. You could finish that another way. Take time to practice. Take time and think about how you're going to make your how you're going to plead your case for what you want. Again, the session on Wednesday will be more about the practice techniques. And James Clear wrote the wonderful book on atomic habits. If you're stuck in a negotiation, figure out the one thing that's truly non negotiable and then compromise on everything else. So you have to really think about what truly is important. But as I said in the lead of this, I need to say it again. Do not immediately say yes, that you're going to take the offer. Say thank you for the thoughtful offer that you've made. I would like to take pen to paper and sit down and review this offer. And how can we get back together in, 2 or 3 days and discuss? And I want to say discuss because usually there's something that you really want to talk to them about. Could I do this over this? So the resources are all there of how do you figure all of this out? And as always, it remains my pleasure. And so with that, we're going to turn it around and take Q&A. And I try to make this very active. So if you have questions, great. If they're really specific to your current situation, let's do those offline. You certainly are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. If something is really specific, do that offline. But if it's for the good of the order, we can do it here. So with that, Libby, what do you got?
Well, we already have a few questions. So thanks to everybody who's been actively listening and taking it all in. Like Diane said, feel free to put your questions in the question and answer component of the Zoom webinar. And hopefully we'll get to as many as we can. um, okay, so the first question that came through, and this is a great question. What is an acceptable amount of time to take before getting back with a counter offer?
I know. And so what I'd say to someone is if someone made you an offer today,
Mm-hmm.
say, might I have a few days and could we reconnect on Thursday or Friday of this week?
Mm-hmm.
Some will say, no, 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 we need a decision faster than that because they're holding other people. If you don't accept the offer, they've got people that are waiting that long. So they might come back and say, is there any way we could chat on Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you've heard everything. You've got to start saying, do you think some of these things are insurmountable, or do you think you've got some space to talk about that with them? I would say Wednesday's fine as long as you can give some committed time to thinking about what you want to ask for.
That makes sense. That
But
makes
you want it to be
sense.
a conversation, not
Mhm.
email banter back and forth. You really want a conversation. You don't want to go in an email, love your offer, but 80's not right.
Mhm.
Oh, that's not what I want. I want a conversation because again, I love asking, what does 65 look like and what does 100 look like?
I think that's a great way to frame it. I've never thought of framing it that way. So I will take that with me, Diane. Thank you. Here's another great question. Is there a point in negotiating an offer for a role where the salary range has been communicated when the job was advertised and the offer represents the upper boundary?
So the offer's on the upper side.
Mm-hmm.
Why I don't understand. If it's on the upper side, the only thing is if it's in a band and you can't expand that band, that's
Yeah.
a problem. So if it's in a band, you have to just make sure you ask the question. Your offer is at the top of the band. Is there room for me to move outside of that band in because I'm expecting myself to do good work.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're already at the top of the band and they say that's going to be your max, that's a problem. But I don't there's I mean, usually people get excited when they're on the top of the on the top of the band. Most people are on the bottom. I always remind people as employers give an offer of 65 to 100, they want to know what they can get for 65. And as a candidate, all you hear is 100. Sorry, that's human nature. Candidates hear the top and the employers are like, what can I get for 65? It's human nature.
No, I think that's a great way to frame that question for sure. Here's the next one. For remote work, what are the trends for being able to work from anywhere and not just from the state where the job contract is established?
You got to ask that question to your organization. Are there, what are some of those things? The one thing I'm hearing more and more is that onboarding thing, meeting
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with people um, that are going to be working kind of as your partners and your peers. That's really, really important, and your team. So people didn't want people to be outside of this time zones because they wanted to be working the same. But then I've got a lot of organizations now that are saying, work when you want to work. That's great. But if I'm trying to connect with somebody, I don't want to get up at 2 a.m. to connect with you. Sorry, I need my sleep. So you got to figure that one out, and you have to ask what is it you're looking for, and what are some of your parameters around remote work. Someone asked their employer to do a letter saying that they were a committed remote worker, and the employer said, I will not do that because this is all subject to change. I'm not expecting it to change back, but I don't know. I can't say that you're 100% remote because I might say, I do need you every other month to be in here for 2 days. Or so that's why they can't say you're 100% remote. So people are getting a little skittish on that. But just figure out, kind of What's the appetite for remote at that organization?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. This is a question about being promoted internally, which is really great. So for those who are wanting that internal promotion, what questions can they ask to negotiate an increase in salary, or maybe more broadly, like how might one go about doing that?
There we go. So a lot of times this conversation is with your annual review.
Hmm.
And you might say, my annual review the last 3 years has been stellar. And my increases the last 3 years are the same, two, two and a half, three. What do I need to do to move this forward? Because if I'm just going to be sitting here always making a 2 to 2.5 to 3% increase, I need to look elsewhere. And employers who are smart know that if you leave your organization, that's where you can get the 10% raise to 15% raise. Most people won't move jobs without a 10 to 15% window. And so, how do you have that conversation with your manager? And you might come back and they say, well, that would be a big jump to take to give you a 10% raise. All right, let's talk about the deliverables for this next project. Or you raise your hand for a stretch assignment and say, could we look at an increase after this stretch assignment where I'm doing totally different work on top of my current work? Can we look at an increase after that? And what does that look like? And what are the deliverables? It's hard to know the deliverables on a stretch assignment because you don't know exactly what that will all entail. But how do you have that conversation? But most employers aren't going to put their neck out for more than what the pot is, which is 2 to 3%. You've got to ask for it, but you got to be able to tell them why. What are the differentiators you're bringing? And I always tell people, if your reviews have been exceptional, say, I'm already doing exceptional work. I'm getting marked as exceptional, but my pay does not reflect that.
Yep.
And
No,
it
I
might
think
not
that.
be pay what you want. You might want flexibility, or you might
Hmm.
say, you know, I keep getting pushback on the remote thing. With this exceptional work, I can do this work. Are you willing to allow this, or this with my work and make it look different?
I think that is a great approach. I really do. And this is probably the last question that we can ask. And there's so many great ones in here. So I'm sorry for folks who we won't be able to get to today. But this person is wondering how to negotiate tuition assistance for an in progress MBA program. Very fitting.
No, if you're in progress, you ask them, "I'm already here, but if they're in a part-time program, I'm already working on the MBA. I would like to immediately continue this process. I don't want to stop out, or I'll stop out." Or I would say is, if I stop out, I'll have to stop out a whole year. Help them know if you stop out, it might not be one semester because sometimes things are very stair step in that. You'd have to step out a whole year and you come back to your employer and say, I really don't want to do that because that will put me a whole nother year from graduation. Are you willing to allow me to continue? Because again, I know the cadence of the program. I know the
Hmm.
program. Here's what it is. It's part-time. I will not be out of the office. Um, and because I do evening and online classes on the weekend. So it's not going to be a conflict for my work. But helping them understand if you get out of cycle, it might be another cycle till you can get back on board. A lot of times employers don't think you plug in and plug out. And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't, for
Help
the most part.
help people know, what it is you're looking for. And I think the biggest thing is opening up a conversation and asking, is this doable? And give them some time after you make a request. Don't immediately expect a response because it might take them a day to get this approved or two. So that's why, again, I don't want you to say, can I, I have this offer. Could I sit on it for 3 months? No, 3 days, yes. But usually people want to hear from you a little sooner because you know that there's somebody else in the wings that if you don't take the job, they would like to go to. And if it takes too long, then they'll know they were not the first choice, which makes it ugly.
Well, Diane, as always, it is so, so helpful and important to chat with you. And I'm just so grateful that you're here today to tell everybody about the different rules of negotiation. I know I definitely learned a lot, and I hope that everyone here did as well. But with that, we are actually at time, exactly at time, which is incredible because usually I feel like we could talk about things forever, Diane, you and I. But with that, I just wanted to again thank everyone so much for being here today. It was such a great conversation. And please know that there are lots of different events like this career code session that we had today that you're very welcome to attend. There's always something really exciting going on at Forte. Our session on Wednesday about navigating the tensions of negotiating as a woman is just one example of that. So definitely check back on the Forte website because there's always something new and interesting taking place. But with that, I just want to thank you again for being here today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you all really soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.